All right, welcome to Halitics. So glad to be talking to you today. It is Monday. It is Monday, the 5th day of August. I can remember the date because it is my wedding anniversary. 34 years, pretty exciting. Man, that's a long marriage and a very good one. I'm very, very delighted, pleased. That was probably the best decision I ever made, I think. I don't think there's even a lot of anything much that competes, but very glad my wife agreed to marry me, and we have been mostly happy. Of course, every relationship has its ups and downs, and we've had our share of trials and tribulations, often not due to the other, but ultimately being together has led us both, I hope, certainly I can say for myself, much happier than I would otherwise be. I note that it is not only I who is celebrating my wedding anniversary day, but also my usual Monday co-host, Arlen, is celebrating with his wife their anniversary, and I believe it's longer. His marriage is longer than mine, which basically just tells you we're both old. He'll be on, the plan is tomorrow. So we'll get into politics with Arlen, and I'm looking forward to that tomorrow. Today, though, with Halitics, as usual, you will get the discussion of all pretty much, well, I guess what I think is most important politically, and maybe some other topics as well, social issues and the like. If you want to join me, you can. 240-242-5646. The number is right there on the screen. I take your calls. I look forward to your calls. I do this program, I've really set it up so that it is very, very caller friendly, unlike virtually every other YouTube live stream out there. So this is really an opportunity for us to have a dialogue, and I hope that we'll have one. I'm going to present a dialogue I've had on social media that I touched upon Friday. Well, more than touched upon, really went into relating to the controversy at the Olympics involving an Algerian boxer who's competing in the women's games. Imani Khalaf has been reported to have tested XY for chromosomes, and that would mean if XY, my understanding, that is the ultimate definition of a biological male. I've posted about this on social media, discussed this on our last program Friday. A lot of people disagree with my take, and I'm going to get a little bit more into it and explain why. Even with some additional information, I remain of the mindset that the bright line test for whether you can compete as a woman in high stakes, high level competition. I'm not talking about high school. I'm not talking about middle school. There can be different rules there, but I believe the ultimate test should be the bright line test. Are you XY or XX? And I recognize that some people aren't either. And there's arguments you can make why some XY people should get to compete as XX. In other words, some bio males should be able to compete as bio females, or compete against bio females. I'll explain why I ultimately don't agree with those views, but I also want to be very, very clear that I believe strongly in everyone's right to live a happy life as the person they are, and we should recognize genders as an individual recognizes themselves. We'll get into that, but for now, the first story, what I try to really focus on more than any other, as you know, what I center is the suffering more than pretty much anything else. When I start my program, I try to center the suffering of the people of Palestine, because our quote closest ally, Israel, is responsible for murdering them in the tens of thousands, perhaps now over 100,000, depending on your source, depending on what you view as the death count. Is it just the published death count, or do you accept what doctors have been saying, that the number may be much, much, much higher? We have a official count that nobody really disputes, right? I mean, it's pretty much accepted that the minimum number that Israel has killed now is just about 40,000, now 39,623 officially. This is from Arabia News, I believe it's how it's pronounced, Al Arabia, maybe wrong, Al Arabia News. This is out of Dubai, United Arab Emirates. But all the source is always the Hamas Ministry of Health, the Palestinian Ministry of Health, which has given rise to complaints by Zionists that it overstates, that the number overstates the true toll. By all reports, the number is an understatement. It's very conservative. No one really has doubted with any credibility the numbers that the Ministry of Health publishes. So 39,623, and that number is almost certainly well below the true toll. Over the past 24 hours, we look at that number: 40 killed by Israel, and the list of official casualties close to 100,000 now, 91,000 since October 7, and that's just in Gaza. Israel's killed a lot of people on the West Bank too. Also, just want to update us from where we were last week. The last toll I had presented was on Thursday last week. Friday didn't get updated numbers. So as of Thursday, Israel had killed 39,623. 39,620. Sorry, that's the number today. As of Thursday, 39,480. We'll go back to that other, yeah. So today it's 39,623. This past Thursday, 4 days ago, it was 39,480. If I do my math, it's 150 dead in 4 days. 150 dead, 4 days. The last 24 hours, we saw 40 more. So average of about 37 a day killed by Israel. That we can confirm by the Hamas Ministry of Health numbers. It's, I say it over words again. You can only just report. You can't really convey. I don't know how good language is. I don't know if Shakespeare could convey the true horror of what Israel's responsible for, the murders, the genocide. 40,000 confirmed, just about 40,000 confirmed dead, and a nation 22.5 million. If you extrapolate that out for the United States, right, we have about 15 times as many people as Gaza. Did I do that right? No. Over 100 times, maybe 150 times as many people in our country. So 40,000 times 150, that would be over 10 million dead at this point. Over 10 million Americans killed. We went to war over 3,000, 4,000 on September 11th, 9/11. And we killed maybe 1 million Iraqis as a result. Israel's killed more than 10 times as many as were killed on September 11 as killed on 9/11, and to do so. And rather than us try to stop it, rather than our government try to stop it, continue to aid and abet the genocide. Quick digression. I went to a meeting yesterday out in Howard County, or up in, I should say up because I'm south, up in Howard County, not too far from me. And it was very interesting. It was about the genocide of Palestine by Israel. And the speakers were good. They were knowledgeable. They were informed. There were probably about 20 people, maybe not 15, 20 people at the meeting. So I was somewhat heartened by that fact. Not that I think there'll be any impact. I just want to note something, and this is not to cast aspersions. My discomfort was at the end when the two speakers were promoting their books. And I get that, you have to make a living, and I understand it, and I'm sympathetic to it, and I'm privileged. I don't really have to raise money for myself, but it just felt somewhat, I have to say, somewhat jarring to me, because this seems to me, this humanitarian crisis, even to juxtapose it, a discussion of one of the great human crimes that we're decrying, we're fighting against, we're trying to stop with every fiber in our being. To juxtapose that with with commercialism, with selling your own product, it just set the wrong tone for me. And I'm wondering if other people feel differently. 240-242-5646. I totally get it. I'm not trying to cast aspersions, but it somehow left me feeling, how is there any conflict of interest there, right? Is there any conflict of interest? Could one see a conflict of interest in the remarks by a person who clearly is truly touched by, moved by, wants to stop a great crime, an ongoing crime, a great crime against humanity, and yet in the same breath or in the next breath is asking you to purchase their product. I'm just saying personally that felt a little bit uncomfortable for me. A little bit uncomfortable for me. It's not just those who are currently living who are experiencing a nightmare now in Gaza. It's actually the dead as well. There's no respite, no rest for them. This is from Reuters. So look at the date line. This is today. I'm trying to be as current as I possibly can. No respite for the dead in Gaza from Reuters. And this story is just something we've talked about, the desecration by Israel. It's not enough for Israel to kill Gazans in extraordinary numbers, right? It's not enough for Israel to eradicate the population of Gaza, to commit this genocide. It's not enough. They have to actually desecrate the dead as well. So here's an image. This is Dateline today from Reuters. People watch as the bodies of unidentified Palestinians are buried at a mass grave. So Israel just dumps. What happens is when the Israeli military moves in, they collect bodies and then they just dump them in front of the Palestinians and say, you take care of it. It's your problem. These are your people. You bury them. We killed them. You bury them. So you see the folks there. And then there's going to be a close-up I'll show you right here. Of some young folks, some kids. And, one of the arguments you get, I've heard, is that Israel has to kill these people because they'll become terrorists, right? They're terrorists in training, or they're even terrorists in utero when a pregnant woman is killed. And it's not completely untrue, right? I mean, if you look at these, I guess they're all boys. I'm going to guess, having been a boy myself, that the one thing they're all thinking is, I just want to get a gun and start killing Israelis. Hell, they might be saying, I want to kill Jews, for all I know. I can't believe that's not what is going through their minds as they see friends, family, co-townspeople being buried in these mass graves. I am certain that what they're thinking is, I'm going to go kill Jews, or I'm going to go kill Israelis. I can't wait to get a gun. So Israel is doing the opposite of making itself safer. It's creating many more enemies, many more people who want to kill them. And it's totally understandable that that's how they feel. That's just being a human. So the answer has to be, if you care about, even if you care about Israel, and certainly I always say a one-state solution, but stop the killing right now. Ceasefire now. Permanent ceasefire now. Just to finish off that Reuters story, because I think it's pretty damn important and tells us about Israel. Israeli military continues to dig up the graves. I mentioned that to open the story, no respite for the dead. Obviously, it's just one more way that Israel is showing contempt for the people of Palestine, for the Gazans, showing zero respect for their humanity. And so one man says, this is again Dateline today, so I'm not, this isn't some old story. So Bilal al-Kawaji, I think, I may have gotten that wrong, Bilal al-Kawaji has buried several members of his family, including 2 brothers, and he cannot find their bodies. This is in Khan Yunis, where Israel went in, occupied, killed, blew up the hospital. There, the Al-Shifa hospital, kept claiming that there were Hamas tunnels underneath, and Israeli forces have dug up the graves of his brothers 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. This is who we support. This is the government. This is the military. This is the genociders. By the way, is genocider a word? I'm not quite sure it is. That we are backing. Can't have that, folks. Just can't. We got to change that. There's that subscribe. I always have trouble with that stupid subscribe button disappearing on me. Very frustrating. We're going in the wrong place. I don't want to distract that from the story itself, though, which is so horrific. I've said, I told you when the 2024 campaign really got underway that I would not vote for Joe Biden. That, Genocide Joe's complete support, unequivocal support for Israel was one step too far for me. And it wasn't just that. I mean, it was very unlikely to vote for Biden anyway. His responsibility for the endless proxy war with Russia, his unwillingness, his actually pushing the war, right? Because instead of negotiating early on when Russia was negotiating, instead of involving the United States in those negotiations, Biden worked with the Tory government of Boris Johnson in the UK to destroy any prospects for peace. And we've seen incredible damage there as a result. There are many other areas, but that's a pretty serious one. So that, plus coupled with his support for genocide, ruled him out as a possible candidate. I haven't yet. I continue to say there's always that little spark of hope that maybe Kamala will be better. And there's, she's a bit of a Rorschach test at this point. Will she do something, anything to stop Israel? Politico, this is from last week, did not get to the story last week, but I don't think anything's more important right now. Harris fends off claims of anti-Semitism from GOP while nodding suffering in Gaza. So I use the term nodding because, she doesn't deny it. She's not saying that Israel isn't doing anything to hurt Palestinians, Gazans. And for the Republican Party, and for, by the way, many Democrats, right? It's not just Republicans. For many Democrats, Josh Gottheimer in New Jersey, possibly the governor of Pennsylvania, who's being considered for the position of vice president, for him too, maybe even any acknowledgement that what Israel is doing is evil, is wrong. Shapiro, by the way, 2 Joshes, Josh Gottheimer, Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, Gottheimer of New Jersey. They may view her as some sort of Jew hater, for all I know, but certainly that's what the Republicans are claiming, of course, disingenuously. And I want to just make the point, I think Trump has said you can't vote for, if you're a Jew, you can't vote for the Democrats because they're too pro-Palestine. I'm not ever saying, I want to be very, very clear, there's a basic assumption on this program you really can't vote for Trump either, right? You can't, I mean, that policy is so bad. Now, I've made the point, I think in some areas Trump hasn't been as bad as Democrats, as the average Democrat. But right now, the ultimate issue we have to face is the crime against humanity committed by Israel. And Trump is trying to claim that the Democrats are too soft on Palestine. They should be harder. They should be more pro-genocide than they already are. So that rules him out. He's gone after Republicans like, right now he's attacking the governor of Georgia, who is a Republican, because apparently he just refused to join Trump in claiming that 2020 was a stolen election. So I can't, Trump is really an out-and-out fascist. I've really come to that conclusion. So no, don't vote for Trump. Be very, very clear. The assumption of this program is Trump is unacceptable. So the question we have to ask ourselves, who is acceptable, is Kamala Harris. So Republicans are trying to make her appear to be okay. I don't think her record supports that. According to Politico, this article, they kind of set out what she has said, done, that Republicans claim have a problem with. And it's so de minimis. It's so minimal. It's such a barely there criticism of Israel, barely there acknowledgement of Palestine. So she says to everyone who has been, this was right after she met with Netanyahu. Remember, her first remarks after meeting with Netanyahu was, I'm always going to be there for Israel. I'm always going to support Israel. We'll always be there. She's platformed Sheryl Sandberg's dishonest, flat out lies about Hamas allegedly weaponizing rape. She platformed Sandberg there. She's never discussed the very real, very well documented sexual crimes by Israel. So Harris has been a staunch ally of the genocide state and hardly supportive whatsoever of Palestine. This is what she said that the Republicans have a problem with. To everyone who's been calling for a ceasefire and to everyone who yearns for peace, I see you and I hear you. Let's get the deal done so we can get a ceasefire to end the war. Let's bring the hostages home. So her first concern, the hostages, has provided much relief to the Palestinian people. So I don't give her really any credit for that. But again, if there's something there, anything there, that really does show true compassion, true concern, and also not only concern, but a willingness to break with Genocide Joe's policies and to go in a very different direction, I would welcome that. I would be so happy to say, hey, yeah, Harris might actually be better than her record suggests she'll be. But we haven't seen it. Here's the counter. This is from, and usually I black out people, but I don't think Kubla Kanya has any problem with my quoting them. Or actually, it's Who's Your Daddy Montreal. I don't think they have any problem with my quoting them. Kamala Harris is one of the most devoted AIPAC stooges in Washington. Yet somehow you want people to believe her stance on Israel has changed in the last 9 months. What an absolute farce. I share this. I don't know that she is one of the most devoted AIPAC stooges in Washington. There are an awful lot. I don't know that she meets that pretty high bar or she's crawls below, I should say, that extraordinarily low bar. But she's been pro-Zionist state, pro-genocide state for a long time. And spokespersons for pro-Israel groups have said that, have acknowledged that. She's hardly someone we can look forward to bringing about needed, critically important change. I think the best source where we can really get a kind of a handle on who Kamala Harris is vis-a-vis Israel, vis-a-vis the Israeli lobby, is the gray zone with Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate. So I'm going to play just a small section of this video. This was posted Friday afternoon, again, after I did my last program. So I just feel like this informs us as to who she is. And again, please do call in. Love to have the conversation with you. 240-242-5646. One other point, I would love to have more dialogue on this program, on my live stream. Direct conversations with you. That's what I would really, really appreciate, enjoy. I would hope we can use it to further our understanding of each other, and maybe even eliminate some misunderstandings, or clear up, I guess is the way you say it, some misunderstandings. So far, that really hasn't happened. What has given me some hope, though, is that Halitics on social media, there's real ferment, there's real back and forth, and I feel like every now and then there is some recognition, at least, that the people that we may disagree with have some legitimate points. That's kind of my ultimate goal, to get to some recognition of the humanity, and beyond even humanity, the reality that we may have different perspectives, come to different conclusions, and that doesn't mean we're always, one of us has to be right and one of us has to be wrong. Here is the gray zone on Kamala Harris.
And that's why it's so important to keep our focus on this genocide that Kamala Harris will be presiding over. She presented, when she called for the supposed ceasefire that Phyllis Bennis was so moved by, she was presenting the precise details of the Israeli position that they were putting forward in Doha. She was acting as Israel's lawyer in Selma. And the way she did it was so manipulative. She said, we need to support an immediate ceasefire. Then everyone starts cheering, yay, for 6 weeks. Like, people in the crowd probably couldn't even hear. She was like, for 6 weeks.
Yeah, it was so cynical. It was so cynical.
All right, so I'm going to stop it for just one moment. So that goes to the claim by some Harris supporters that she really will make a real difference. When she was in Selma, when she's talking about the anniversary of the march at the Edmund Pettus Bridge, she actually, back in the 60s civil rights, led by John Lewis, March on Selma for Civil Rights, and she brought up the rights of the Palestinian people being violated, and one way we can address that, said Harris, is a ceasefire. And Blumenthal saying, you know what, it was hollow, it was meaningless. She says, yeah, ceasefire for 6 weeks. I think that's very, very fair. Harris using the very low bar that has been set by AIPAC, that every politician cannot crouch, cannot go above, right? It's a super low bar and you're all expected to stay under it. That is for expressing some concern, some empathy for the Palestinian people, and, some even tepid or mild criticism of Israel. Remember, Biden got a lot of criticism when he held up some weapon, a few bombs that Israel didn't even need. So even the slightest, mildest, least impactful commentary that suggests that Israel isn't perfect, you get pilloried for in the media. And so Max is saying, hey, what she said at that bridge, a few weeks of ceasefire? Nothing, burger. And Mate is saying, yeah, it was purely cynical. It was, hey, let me get some credit for apparently caring about Palestinians while actually calling for no change whatsoever, no meaningful change whatsoever. Let's continue, because I thought Mate had some very interesting thoughts here, which to me were more insightful than Blumenthal's.
And yeah, look, I mean, the one thing, again, I do think it's a positive that Joe Biden's not at the head of the ticket, because I don't think you can do worse than
so
him.
I want to stop it right there. So This is the pro-Kamala view. What Monte is saying is, hey, better that Kamala had up the ticket than Biden. Biden was so bad that she could be an improvement.
I just don't. He's, to me, at a different level of unhinged. He's a committed neocon. Like Obama personally, I don't think was a neocon. He just had no political courage at all, and he was told what to do when it comes to Syria, Libya, and he went along with it because he has no conviction. Kind of like Trump, he just wants to be liked.
I think there's truth to that, by the way, with respect to Libya. I don't think, from my recollection, when we supported the rebellion or the rebels in Libya, and we promoted the idea that that if we didn't take Gaddafi out, he was going to go door to door, was the famous quote, and East Libya and kill everybody, 1 million people were at risk. And it proved not to be true, proved to be a falsehood, but it was a lie that was promoted much more aggressively by Hillary Clinton, then Secretary of State, who absolutely wanted a war with Libya, and she got what she wanted and destroyed that country, made us all less safe. Monte's saying, Obama didn't really give a crap about that. He didn't support that. He wasn't as bad as, Hillary was just weak. He didn't have the courage of convictions. I think that gives a little bit too much credit to Obama. I think Obama was pretty pro-war too. And there are areas where you could say Biden wasn't even as bad as Obama, because he opposed the pivot to Afghanistan, which was also a disaster. But on balance, yeah, it's fair. What Monte's saying is Obama gave into the neocons in government, and we've all been suffering as a direct result.
I don't think Trump is like a. Well, actually, I don't know what's in Trump's brain, because Trump does have a visceral hatred for Iran. So I don't want to characterize Trump.
Hatred for Iran. Remember, the great success of the Obama foreign policy in his second term was a peace deal with Iran, which made us all safer, and started to tamp down tensions. Of course, they were quickly aggravated for a variety of reasons, including Trump.
But I don't think Obama was like an ideological neocon in the way that Biden was. And I don't know if Harris is either. But in that situation, you can't expect.
I don't know what Harris is. He's and I would agree. We don't have any reason to think she's some kind of, let's expand America's footprint all around the world. Like RFK Jr. said, Israel's our aircraft carrier in the Middle East. We need it there so we can continue to destabilize regimes throughout that area, which is very critical because of the oil and gas, oil especially. It's not clear, that's how Harris feels, and Monte's saying that's exactly what Biden believes.
Expect anything better from her at all. The only thing you can do is be honest about what her policy is. And so far,
he's saying we can't expect better than what we're getting from Harris, but we can be honest. I want to go replay that because I stepped on it a little bit. But I think this is fair. What Monte is saying, she's probably better. She's probably not as bad as Biden, but we can't really expect any policy changes.
Trump is like a. Well, actually, I don't know what's in Trump's brain, because Trump does have a visceral hatred for Iran. So I don't want to characterize Trump, but I don't think Obama was like an ideological neocon in the way that Biden was, and I don't know if Harris is either. But in that situation, you can't expect anything better from her at all. The only thing you can do is be honest about what her policy is, and so far, it's no deviation from Biden whatsoever.
All right, so let's stop it there. In fact, I did stop it there. As Mate says, we have to be honest, and what we're seeing from Harris, what we can expect from Harris, even if she's not, the neocon that clearly Biden may be, we can't expect anything better from her than the current policies. And so you have to say to yourself, is that good enough for me? Is defeating Trump good enough for me? Do we have to vote for her? Perhaps if we're in a set, Arlen makes the point, well, hey, I'm in California, so I don't have to vote for a Democrat to defeat Trump. So if you're in Pennsylvania, if you're in Ohio, is being the same as Biden, but not sharing his ideological bent. Is that good enough for you? I don't think it is. You know, I think when there's a much, much, much better candidate out there, then you have to vote for that person under these circumstances. It's not like you're voting for a mixed bag with Harris. You're voting for a very problematic, pro-war, pro-corporate candidate. So I don't see what you're hearing from Monte as justifying a vote for Harris. Now, if you want to vote for her, as Carlos said Thursday, if you feel that, well, Trump is that bad, and I agree he is, then you have no choice. You know, then go ahead, vote for her. Not that he's going to, but go ahead, he gets it. It's a close race. I think Trump is imploding. I think Trump's going to lose. And I was trying to think, have I said this? This is the latest poll, CBS News Now, Harris up. And I was thinking about this. Did I say, I know I said at one point Trump was going to win, that Biden had no chance. And I remember even saying Harris did not poll better than Biden, right? That Biden polled better than Harris. So I hope I didn't say, I don't know if I did, that I didn't think, you know, Harris had a chance to beat Trump, or that Harris couldn't beat Trump. If I said that, I was 100% wrong. I don't think I ever said it quite that way. I think I said, hey, if you're Biden, you can make an argument that you're stronger than Harris. And at this point, Biden can't, you know, and I said a month ago, Biden can't win. I think that was right. Biden couldn't win. Harris probably will win. And Trump is an awful candidate. He's going after the popular Republican governor of Georgia, a state where he's now up by only 2 points, according to one poll. Loses Georgia, he ain't going to be president. He lost Georgia to Biden, loses Georgia again, he ain't going to be president. And he's campaigning. I mean, Trump's not very intelligent. Trump is an incredibly reactive person. He's a complete narcissist. He has zero empathy. By the way, having some measure of empathy, or at least understanding of other people, is incredibly important if you're a politician. Because you want to appear to be concerned about the people whose votes you're seeking. You want to appear as though you understand them. You get where they're coming from. You feel their pain, right? I mean, that's a pretty important aspect of being a successful politician. And Trump is terrible at it, as, by the way, was Hillary. Trump won a race that he was pretty much widely expected to lose because the opponent was terrible. He almost was reelected because he was up against another terrible opponent. Harris is a bad opponent, but I don't think she's not nearly as bad as Biden, or frankly, even Hillary was. It's kind of hard to believe. Well, I guess it isn't hard to believe because they were terrible candidates. Democrats have a lot of issues if they're going to try to win. I mean, it's not, they're, for good reason, very unpopular as well. But the good news for Harris is that Trump's a jackass. Trump's a narcissist. Trump says really stupid things. And the fear-mongering by the Democratic Party that Trump is ultimately a fascist who's going to never allow another election again if he's elected isn't utterly without some foundation. I mean, Trump did say, once you vote for me this time, you'll never have to vote for me. You'll never have to vote again. We're trying to read the tea leaves, right? Could Kamala be better than we fear? And one of the tests that a lot of progressives have put in front of her is her choice for vice president. Well, I kind of agree with what Trump said about J.D. Vance. It doesn't really matter. She'll pursue the same policy with regard to Israel and with regard to everything else, regardless of who her vice president is. The argument that somehow the vice president matters is even belied by the claim, or for those who say, well, she could be good on Israel, let's see who she picks. Is she going to pick Josh Shapiro? That's bad. If she picks someone else, then maybe that means she is going to take the concerns of the Gazan people seriously and stand up to Israel. That's the argument, right? We look to who she picks for vice president. But for those who make that argument, Kamala Harris is kind of a real strong counterpoint. Because if you're going to say, well, she really cares about Israel, look at what she said, look at her statements, her critical statements. Biden picked her. She's his vice president. And presumably, apparently, she had zero impact on his policies. The president did what the president wanted to do, regardless of what Harris wanted. So why is there any reason to believe that whoever Harris picks as VP is going to impact on her policies? There just isn't. You have to look at her record. And her record is not good. And her statements aren't good either. Her statements are largely meaningless. They're word salads and the like. And to the extent she's engaged in performative gestures, they've been pro-Israel, anti-Palestine, like entertaining Sheryl Sandberg, like condemning protesters on college campuses for allegedly being pro-Hamas or pro-terror, without saying word one about Israeli terror. I was really taken by this tweet by Jimmy J, and I don't think he originated it. I don't know quite who Jimmy J is, frankly. But as I've said, I don't see Trump as a legitimate option in this election. Harris might be. So why don't we have a debate? Why aren't we pushing for, on the left, a debate that includes the best candidate in the race, Jill Stein, the one true pro-peace candidate? If Kamala Harris is really prepared to embrace the cause of the Palestinian people, that is, the cause of a people that doesn't want to be eliminated, eradicated, genocided, then shouldn't she be talking to a candidate who's made it very, very clear that that's one of the most important platforms for her? This is the right debate. Let's sideline Donald Trump altogether. Yes, let's have that. No, it's not going to happen. But it would be really, really nice to see. Speaking of alternative candidates, my son pointed out to me, and I won't say I was, maybe it was mocking RFK Jr. for this story. I mean, it's more disgusting to me than anything else. It really kind of disgusts me. And, I don't oppose hunting for food. And I know people who have gone bear hunting and eat the bear, and that's fine. But this story reflects again what a bad candidate, how unqualified RFK Jr. is. And as I was discussing this, my son pointed out, hey, you used to support him. I remember when you said people should vote for RFK Jr. And that is correct. When the Democratic primary season began, RFK Jr. announced he was going to run as a Democrat. And he, at that time, this was before October 7, he was really outspoken against the U.S. Involvement, the U.S. promotion, that is, of an endless proxy war with Russia. RFK Jr. was spot on. And that was the most important, probably, issue for a president at that time. But since then, he's kind of backed away a little bit. He's of that position. He's been more critical of Russia. And he's become an outspoken advocate for the Israeli genocide. So as the information came in to me on RFK Jr., I moved away from him forcibly, quickly. I note also about RFK Jr. that his policies that came to light after he first announced his run are very bad, other than the kind of anti-Ukraine war, proxy war policy that he had from the beginning. He's a crypto kook. He embraces conspiracy theories about the climate crisis conversation, right? Oh, people who are talking about climate crisis, they're really just trying to grab more power for governments. Not the only way we can prevent totalitarianism, fascism, authoritarianism is if we take on the climate crisis. So RFK Jr. is a really bad candidate, and this is just one more example. Here he admits dumping a bear carcass in New York's Central Park. It's quite extraordinary, really, that this happened. And I was looking at this, and again, apparently he was in upstate New York, or Goshen, I guess, is the Catskills, I believe. It was in about 75 miles north of New York City. And as he was driving along on a falconry outing, which I'm going to discuss in a moment, the car in front of him struck a bear, maybe it was a baby bear, small bear, cub, killed the bear. And according to the New Yorker magazine, Kenny was tickled. Well, why would you be tickled? I mean, it's sad. It's very, very sad. A bear cub is killed. The mama's bear is going to be very, very sad, of course. And, I guess, is that Nancy Pelosi? She's mama bear, right? According for AOC, anyway. I guess but so the poor little cub is killed. And the mama bear is going to be devastated. And he's tickled. What the hell is funny about it? Now, I get, apparently he said, hey, let's scoop up the carcass and then we can skin it and we can eat it. It's roadkill, apparently under New York state law. Yeah, you kill a deer that runs in front of your car, you kill a bear. You can eat the bear or the deer, but you're supposed to report the deer. I don't know about the deer because there's so many deer. But the bear you're supposed to report to the wildlife authorities, which they didn't do. And then there was a question, could we really keep the bear? So ultimately, he dumped the bear carcass in Central Park. I mean, what the hell is that? What kind of a nut is this? He's clearly, look, I care about policy. You can say, oh, that doesn't really matter. If he's really good on Ukraine, then maybe shouldn't you consider a vote for him? And I'd hate to admit, yeah, maybe. But he's bad on a lot of other policies. And this is a perfect example of how he's not really rational, right? His views are, again, the crypto kook stuff. He's supposed to be an environmentalist. Bitcoin is incredibly bad for the environment because it uses up so much electricity. You have to use up so much electricity to mine for those stupid fake things that aren't even, that are just purely virtual. And then you dump a bear carcass in Central Park? That's what an environmentalist does? I don't think so. By the way, 60 years old at the time. This was 2014. He was 60 years old. This wasn't a kid. This wasn't someone in their 20s. 60 years old. All right, 240-242-5646. Maybe you're an RFK Jr. supporter, you want to weigh in. Just want to note one other thing. This whole thing about a falconry outing, that also struck me. Falconry is a blood sport. Those falcons go out there and they hunt other animals and they kill them. So you take your falcon out in a field somewhere, and what you're hoping is the falcon's going to kill a hare, or it's going to kill a squirrel, or it's going to kill, something. It's going to bring it back to you. And it's pretty cruel too, because these are, besides the killing by the falcon is going to be cruel. I mean, that's what falcons do. I mean, that's nature. I don't have a problem with that when it's a falcon in the wild. But the falcons have these like helmets they have to wear, and they're connected. I don't know. They wear these things on their talons. It's very unnatural. And you have to say, what kind of a person would go in for a sport like that? Even if you're like, hey, it sounds cool. But once you're confronted with the reality, do you really do it? This guy, he is just not somebody to take seriously as a candidate. And that's not because he's an alternative party, because I support Stein, but RFK Jr. is without question the wrong candidate. If you're looking for change, if you're looking for someone to take on the billionaire elites. So finally from the Hill, independent candidate Kennedy Jr. posed with a bloody bear carcass. I don't have the copy. I don't have that image here. And acknowledged he was a person who dumped the bear in the Central Park. 60 years old at the time, with his hand in the mouth. And apparently he was sort of grinning too, right? He was tickled. What the hell? What the hell is that about? What? This is what our political system comes down to. Pretty much an out-and-out fascist Trump, this nut job Kennedy Jr., and Kamala Harris, somebody who has no core, no principles, no morale, no values that we can point to that are, tried and true, that are stable. Just a creature, a pure political creature. That's what we've got among our candidates. And then there's one really good one, Jill Stein. I know people talk about Claudia Dela Cruz. I know nothing about her. Peace and Justice Party, I think it's called. Is that right? I probably should. That's a weakness on my part. I don't think she's on that many ballots. Not even that Jill is. Socialist Party, vote socialist. What, I don't know what party she's in. Hey, I would consider that, right? If she's the stronger, I think on the left we have to unite in support of one, the strongest true progressive that's running. The only way I can see around that position, because clearly the only true progressives running are Stein and Dela Cruz. The only way I could see around uniting in support of the strongest of the two progressives is, okay, Harris, you don't have to hold your nose and vote for her. She does have some bad positions, but she has some really good ones too. And most importantly, her position on Israel is going to represent a real change, real sea change from that of Biden. Unfortunately, we don't see that. And those who would argue, well, the Democrats are just better, right? Okay, the Republicans are, okay, there are a lot of issues we don't like about Democrats, but in the end, they're better. They're more caring. They're more empathetic. I mean, where does that come from? It's just so clearly not true. So this is from Saturday's New York Times, August 3rd. The super liberal, right? Baghdad on the Bay. The mayor there. Nope. I've had enough of those homeless people. We're not going to pursue a pro-housing policy. We're not going to figure out ways to create decent, safe places for them to stay. It's too expensive. We require raising taxes on the billionaire bros, the billionaire tech bros, and the billionaire tech sisses, not just bros. Sheryl Sandberg, right? I think she lives in San Francisco. We're not going to do that. We're going to give them bus tickets, tell them to leave, give them free bus tickets, issue citations. We're not going to let those homeless camps develop. Now, it's just incredibly, and I get it, by the way. Look, last time I was in Berkeley, I think it was 2019, 2020, something like that. Probably 2019. There's homeless people on every block. There's a few homeless people. It's not a pleasant environment. It's not a clean environment. Nobody wants to see that, right? Visitors would prefer not to see that. So I get it. Hey, let's just round them up and put them in the desert somewhere, like the Israelis are doing. Look, there's our example. Israel wants to round up the Palestinians and put them all in the desert. Why don't we just round up all the homeless people in San Francisco and put them out in the Central Valley somewhere? Give them a one-way ticket out of town. And I get that. I get the thinking. The problem is they're human beings. And the policies that we've pursued are responsible for them being on the streets in the first place. So according to Breed, we need tough love on the streets of our city. What could be tougher than being homeless? It's not bad enough to be homeless. Is that her point? It doesn't suck hard enough to be living in incredibly unsafe, unsanitary conditions where you're always possible prey to criminals. If you have any belongings, you're sleeping on a friggin' sidewalk in a dirty blanket. That's not tough enough for London Breed? Wow. Unbelievable. And presumably, well, she's running for re-election. I guess it's the Democratic primary coming up. What is her opponent calling for a harder line? These are Democrats. These are people who claim to be, they're Nancy Pelosi supporters. Oh, we're better than the Republicans. Are you really? Are you really better? Based on what? What policies are you championing that are humane, that represent real concern, empathy for the underdog, for those who have less? Again, not seeing it. Let's not be, when we're Democrats, let's not be so self-righteous, so confident that we're better than Republicans. All right, if you want to join me, I'm going to call it a day in a moment, 240-242-5646. But I do want to, so again, if you want to join me, I'll take your call, 240-242-5646. I just want to highlight for a moment what I shared on social media. I don't think I showed you this Friday, although I had showed it. This relates, again, to the saga of the Algerian boxer Imani Khalaf, who became somewhat notorious when she won a boxing match. And I don't think, I'll be real clear, there shouldn't be boxing in the Olympics. This is a blood sport. Talk about blood sport of falconry. This is a horrible blood sport. Boxing is. It's wrong. And especially women shouldn't be competing in it because of, even though women punch less hard, so they're less likely to get a brutal punch the way a male might take in a boxing match, their entire frame is more fragile. And the damage they can suffer is tremendous. So I don't want to see any boxing in the Olympics, period, but I especially don't want to see women boxing in the Olympics. I know it's a popular sport. People like to see it. I get that. I don't like it. I don't want to see it. Imani Khalaf won on a TKO or withdrawal decision against an Italian boxer, Carini, who said she'd never been hit so hard. And then, I guess, pretty much right-wing media reported that Khalaf, had been reported to have tested positive for the Y chromosome, which your XY, you're biologically male. This is how I understand it. If you're XX, you're female. So the Y makes you male. And then there was a lot of pushback. Well, she has a vagina. She was assigned male at birth. So this is not true. This is not true. Well, that all could be true. You could be XY, but there's a condition called Morris syndrome, I believe, where you have a vagina, your testes don't develop fully, or they remain, they don't descend, but biologically you're a male. Your body never can create eggs, right? Even you might have a uterus, so you could have a fetus, and could have some kind of implantation. So people say, well, they're XY people who have given birth because their uterus developed. And I understand artificial uteruses can even be put in men, or trans men, trans women who biologically might be male. And they can actually become pregnant. But the XY chromosome individual can never create eggs. That's that's an ultimate hallmark of being female. There could be other conditions in a female that prevent her from creating eggs, but in XY, that's it. You're not going to create eggs. You're not going to have a period. End of story. So one of the responses to my chromosome post, XY means you compete as a woman, was that I'm a useful idiot and I'm a fascist. So to me, that's like, okay, I get you disagree. Can we have a conversation? What's your rationale? And the argument, I guess, and I've heard this from a lot of people, is you're not empathic. You don't care. You're not concerned with all the discrimination that trans people face, and you're playing into it by saying that this boxer who was assigned female at birth, who has apparently a vagina, isn't really a woman. And I'm not saying that. That's not my point at all. My point is simply, but I get why people think I haven't been empathetic enough. I probably haven't been. I haven't expressed my concern. I get it. Imani is not trans under any definition. She is not transitioned from being male. She may biologically be, under the ultimate definition, male because she's XY, but transition presupposes you lived as one sex, or you were perceived as one sex, you were perceived as one gender, and then you transitioned to the second gender, the other gender. That's not what Imani Khalif has ever done. Imani Khalif has always been considered by everyone to be female. But apparently that perception from a pure biological standpoint may, if the International Boxing Association test is correct, or the report is correct that they tested her and they tested her correctly, biologically male. Okay. No aspersions, no criticism, either whether she's trans or they use the term as intersex, or actually the new term, as I understand, is DSD, which I believe stands for development of sexual. I don't even remember now. I have to get the DSD term correct. I'm sorry about that. But some people say it's a developmental sexual organ disorder, and some say developmental sexual differences. So it's either, the term disorder is now out of favor too, because it makes people look like there's something wrong with them. And really, there isn't something wrong with Imani Khalif. But it is true, assuming that she is XY, it is true that her sexual organs did not develop the way most XY people, the great majority, 99% plus of people who are XY, they develop penis gonads. She did not. That's a development sexual organs difference, clearly. So my view at this point is that if you have that, it's not whether you have a difference or disorder. It's whether you are XY. That should determine whether you compete as a woman. If you are XY, I would say no. You have to draw the line somewhere. There has to be a bright line test. We're not going to eliminate women's sports because, right? I mean, we're not going to say, okay, men can compete against women in women's sports. Then it's not women's sports. You could eliminate men's sports and just have an all-in category. Anyone who wants to compete against men can, and I believe that is the case. For example, if a woman, and we've heard talk of this, I don't believe it'll ever happen, I don't believe it can happen, but if a XX woman were able to play Major League Baseball, she would be welcome. There's no question. The czars of the game, the owners would love, can you imagine? There's apparently a pitcher in Australia who can throw about 85, 86 miles per hour, who's a woman. That's really, really, really fast. That's fast enough to be a high school phenom even, right? But there's virtually no one in the major leagues who throws under 90, except for a few who throw knuckleballs. And that requires a big hand and all sorts of other physiological traits that apparently this woman anyway doesn't possess. But if a woman were able to strike out, get out major league batters, she would be welcomed in the major leagues. Because there's really no threat, right? I mean, yeah, even if there was a once in a blue moon occurrence, men wouldn't be out jobs. Maybe one man wouldn't get to play in the majors, but that would be about it. But if you allowed men to compete in women's sports, they would almost immediately dominate, take over. That'd be the end of it. No more women's sports if men can compete in them. So you have to have a bright line test. You have to say, okay, yes, you get to compete against women. No, you don't. And what trans activists have said is, well, if you're trans, you're a woman, therefore you get to compete against women. I don't accept that. I reject that idea. Because biologically, trans people are still men. Bio males. And they retain advantages. And even if they didn't retain advantages, which I've heard, you'd still lose spaces for biological that have been set aside by society, I believe with the intent of setting aside for bio women, bio girls, competitive space where they don't have to compete against bio males. The situation with Caliph is really, really tough. Caliph is very, very, very tough. And so I did some additional research. I thought this was a very useful, helpful article because I really want, I try to understand these issues and I take very seriously the positions I take and I don't want to hurt people. And I want to be as informed as I can be. I don't want to hurt people unless, well, I think that my position is correct. And if they're hurt, I'm sorry, but this is the right solution. And if you allow trans, and in the case of Caliph, if she has that DSD, developmental sexual organ difference, DSD, if she has that, then it would be hurtful to her if she's excluded. But on the other hand, it would mean there would be another space for another woman to compete. So it's a zero-sum game. For every trans woman, for every DSD woman who competes, that means a bio woman doesn't. That's a zero-sum game. That doesn't make things better for society. Instead, what we need to do, ultimately, what we need to do is come up with a way to guarantee those who are sexually different than the norm have spaces where they can compete. That's what we really need to do. So this is from the Journal of Clinical Investigation. This was published by, I found this at the NIH website, so I presume they do a good job curating controversy surrounding female athletes with differences. Isn't that what I said? Differences in sexual development. What did I say? Sexual difference, sexual or developmental sexual organ difference. So it's differences in sexual development. That's the right way to put it. So this is from that site. And I just want to say DSDs, differences in sexual development, are not to be confused with the transgender state. So I want to be real clear about that. It is not transgenderism. And then they, in this article, define differences in sexual development in female athletes include orders of, we talk about this gonadal development, excessive androgen production, an individual with 46XX, which is typical female. And then they say also, or problems with androgen synthesis, which is XY, typical male. So they're defining XY as female athlete. So this is where there seems to be some question. Are you really a female if you're XY? And I think this article gets it wrong. And again, it's not a not a study of human biology or human, or I guess that's the term, biology. But you go into this article, if I can get it up straight, they claim, maybe they use terms incorrectly too, but this is a progressive group, Novo Nordisk Foundation, 100 years, and they're stating what I understand to be the case. More women than expected are genetically men. And I don't know, I would say are genetically men, I would say are genetically male. I think that's, either you can't be a woman and a man. You're either a woman or a man. You could have transitioned from being a woman to a man. You could transition from being a man to a woman, but at one time you're a man and then the next you're a woman. But I do think it would be accurate to say more women than expected are genetically male. And what they're saying is that some individuals who are XY grow up as women with a woman's body and only discover well into puberty that they are different. Not disordered, it's important to use that term, they are different, right? It's less than 1%, but still higher, I guess, than some people thought. So that could be, and I believe probably defines or is who Imani Khalif is. And then we'll go back to the article that was published in NIH. One of the arguments I've heard is, hey, if you have this condition, if you're XY, but you don't develop male organs, right, or visible male organs, you may develop them hidden, they may be inside of you, but you don't develop them visibly, you still can't ever have, you don't have a period, you don't have egg production, but you also don't develop testicles or a penis. There are various ways this happens, or various differences in the people who have this difference. So one is where they don't, the testosterone, which is the androgen insensitivity, they all have some level of androgen insensitivity. In other words, they have testosterone, but the testosterone doesn't create in them the typical male traits: denser muscle mass, more height, more muscular, just more defined muscles as opposed to denser muscles. Usually thicker bones too. Men have denser bones than women in general. So if you have this condition, your body may not react the way male bodies, the way most male bodies, most XY bodies do. You won't get those increases in muscle mass, speed, explosivity. And the argument therefore is, well, yes, they might be XY, they might be biologically male, but it doesn't matter, even if they have more testosterone, because that testosterone doesn't change them to become stronger, faster, bigger. But the problem is, as this article points out, there's variable degrees of masculization and partial insensitivity. In other words, not all XY males, not all XY women, I should say, not all XY women who have this Morris syndrome, who have androgen insensitivity, are completely insensitive to androgens. There's variations. And therefore, you could have this condition, this not disorder, difference, and still have an advantage. Biologically, physiologically. So based on that, I stand by my position that this should be the cutoff. I don't think you can, and I've heard this said all the time, well, there's never a perfectly level playing field. It's never going to be perfectly fair. I think that's true. But you still need to cut off. You have to have some space that at least you call women's sports. And if you do that, it can't be open to all. You have to have a cutoff. So for me, cutoff shouldn't be trans. Yes, you could be a trans woman, but you retain advantages that, and even if you don't retain them, do we want to make sure that you've had surgery? Do we want to look up every trans or every Olympic athlete's skirt metaphorically to see if they've had all the estrogen supplements, and they've had the testosterone blocks and everything else, and make sure that they're no better than they would be if they are women? And you could never do that anyway. So actually, it's less intrusive. It's more respectful, in my opinion, to the athlete to say, okay, look, and by the way, if Khalif competes, there shouldn't be boxing in high school, but so let's say that she competes as a girl. Everyone thinks she's a girl. She looks like a girl. She has a vagina. She competes in soccer. She's good. Fine. That's it. But at some point, when sports gets to a certain level and it's very competitive, they start doing tests. They do random tests. They see, do you have testosterone? Have you been taking testosterone supplements? Have you been taking human growth hormone, men and women? Because if you cheat, you put everyone else at a disadvantage. And that's how they find out. If you're a boxer and you take human growth hormone, you have much more strength in that moment. You could kill somebody that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise killed. So it can come out, and if it does, it does. I think the fact is, in high school, it probably wouldn't have come out. She's not that dominant. But she is better. She is more athletic than the great majority of women, just not all women. Just like there are many men who are good athletes, but they're not better. There are lots of men who are really good amateur tennis players who would lose to Serena Williams. And if they transitioned, they would still lose to Serena Williams, but they might beat a lot of other women that are very, very, very good tennis players. So there has to be a bright line test. And to me, at this point, the science suggests that bright line test should be between those who are XY and those who are XX. And then I know that's not the end of it, because there's people who are XXY. And there's other variations. Those tend to be extraordinarily rare. But before weighing in that, I think we need more science. We need more studies. We need more investigation. But when it comes to right now, to me, that's the test I would employ. All right, that'll do it for today's program. Tomorrow is going to be with, and I didn't get my caller. I am so sorry. You know what? Let's do it. I got a caller on. I'm sorry, caller. I did not have you ring. Who do I have on the line? I'm going to take your call right now.
Hi, Hal. This is Charles in Monterey.
Hi, Charles. How you doing?
I'm just saying, the only person you can vote for is Jill Stein. And if she's not on the ballot, you can write her in. And if everybody did this, we would have the complete change that would just completely renovate our country.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, Charles. When people say to me, you can't vote for Stein because she can't win, my response is, well, she only can't win if we all say she can't win. But if we all say she can win, then maybe she can win.
Yes, she could. We need a movement.
Hey, I'm really glad you called. Sorry it took me a moment to answer. I didn't have the volume up for the ring, but it's really nice to hear from you. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. I'm 84 years old now, and I'm living with Andrea. We have a good life here, and the perfect climate in Monterey. What's
I'm with you,
like?
man. I miss it. I miss it. Say hi to Andrea for me. I miss you guys. I miss the coast. I'm going to call it a show, Charles, unless you had another comment. I'm happy to hear more from you if you like. Otherwise, I'll be on tomorrow at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. your time, with Arlen.
Okay. Well, thanks, Hal. Just that we need Jill Stein. All the other candidates are pro-war, pro-genocide, pro-Israel, anti-worker, and so on, I will say Jill Stein's the way to go.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Thanks so much, Charles. You have a great day. I won't say great afternoon because it's still morning in Monterey, but it's really, really nice to hear from Charlie. And there he hangs up. Let me see if I did not mute him in time. You heard the sound. I'll be back tomorrow. Enjoy your day.